The text message from Uncle Richard lit up my phone like a beacon of familiar disappointment. The Sullivan family reunion is next weekend at the Ritz. No failures allowed this year. You understand, right? I sat in my private office overlooking my island's pristine beach, watching my staff prepare for tomorrow's emergency board meeting. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my family thought I was struggling to make ends meet, I had built Morgan Industries into a $7 billion empire. Miss Morgan, my assistant Olivia's voice came through the intercom. The board members' helicopters are confirmed for tomorrow's landing. Should I prepare the main villa? Yes, I replied. And Olivia? Make sure the Sullivan Industries portfolio is ready. Tomorrow will be interesting. 8 years ago, when I walked away from the family's investment firm to start my own company, Uncle Richard had been the loudest critic. Samantha's throwing her life away, he told anyone who would listen. No proper training, no connections, just foolish dreams. What he didn't know was that I had spent years learning everything about business while working as his assistant. Every mistake he made, every opportunity he missed, every shortcut that would eventually come back to haunt him. I saw it all. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my cousin Peter. Seriously, Sam, it's better if you skip this one. Dad's in rare form since losing the Singapore contract. The Singapore contract. I smiled, remembering the look on the client's face when they realized my company could offer better terms than Sullivan Industries. They didn't know I was Richard Sullivan's niece. To them, I was just Samantha Morgan, the CEO who had revolutionized international trade financing. I opened my laptop, checking Sullivan Industries' stock price. Down 30% this month alone. Their missed opportunities and outdated practices were finally catching up with them. Which was exactly why the board had called tomorrow's emergency meeting. Miss Morgan, Olivia appeared at my door. Your cousin Jessica is trending on social media again. Another yacht party. I pulled up the posts, Jessica Sullivan, draped in designer clothes, champagne in hand, bragging about the family's success. If only she knew that her father's company was hemorrhaging money, that their empire was built on shifting sands. The sun was setting over my private island, painting the sky in shades of gold. I had bought this place 3 years ago, not for show like my family would have, but as a strategic location for our Asia-Pacific operations. The fact that it would soon host the downfall of Sullivan Industries was just a delicious bonus. My phone lit up with another family message, this time in the group chat. Jessica. The Ritz's presidential suite is ready for the reunion. Daddy says this year's party will show everyone why Sullivans are the kings of finance. Peter, can't wait. Did you see our feature in Forbes? Aunt Catherine, Richard's speech about family legacy will be spectacular. I closed the chat without responding. They had no idea that tomorrow's board meeting would completely reshape their understanding of family legacy. Your evening schedule, Miss Morgan. Olivia handed me a tablet. The lawyers have confirmed all the paperwork. Sullivan Industries board members will arrive at 9 a.m. tomorrow. I nodded, thinking about how quickly things would change. Uncle Richard's board had discovered the truth about their company's situation. The missed contracts, the failed expansions, the mounting debt. They had secretly reached out to Morgan Industries for a bailout, not knowing they were dealing with the niece their CEO had banned from the family reunion. Looking out at my island's pristine beach, I thought about the last family gathering I'd attended. 3 years ago, when Uncle Richard had publicly humiliated me for wasting my potential on a startup. Tomorrow, I said to Olivia, please make sure the helipad is ready by 8:30 a.m. and have the Sullivan Industries files displayed in the main conference room. Of course, she paused at the door. And the family reunion next weekend? I smiled, picking up a folder marked acquisition proposal. Oh, I have a feeling the reunion will come to me. Little did my family know, but their emergency board meeting on my private island would be just the beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't showing up to prove them wrong. It's letting them come to you to beg for help. As night fell over my island paradise, I reviewed the documents one last time. Tomorrow, the Sullivans would learn that the failure they banned from their reunion was their only hope for survival. And I intended to make that lesson unforgettable. The morning sun cast long shadows across my island's helipad as I watched the first corporate helicopter approach. Through my office windows, I could see the Sullivan Industries board members arriving one by one, their faces tense with worry. Uncle Richard's helicopter was scheduled to land last, a final dramatic entrance for a man who had always prioritized appearance over substance. Miss Morgan, Olivia entered with my morning briefing. The first group of board members is being escorted to the conference room. Mr. Sullivan's helicopter just radioed in. He's bringing additional guests. Additional guests? I raised an eyebrow. Yes, your cousins Peter and Jessica are with him. Apparently, they insisted on coming when they heard about the emergency meeting. Perfect. I thought about Jessica's social media posts from last night, still boasting about the family reunion, completely unaware that her father's empire was crumbling. I adjusted my Armani suit. Not the flashy kind my cousins wore, but elegant in its simplicity. The watch on my wrist, a Patek Philippe that cost more than Jessica's car, was my only concession to luxury. Unlike my family, I never felt the need to broadcast my wealth. The conference room was designed to impress, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. I had deliberately positioned the Sullivan Industries financial reports on the massive screen, years of decline displayed in harsh, undeniable numbers. They're all here, Olivia announced, including Mr. Sullivan and your cousins. I took a deep breath, remembering the last time I'd seen them. Christmas dinner 2 years ago, where Uncle Richard had loudly discussed my unfortunate career choices, while Jessica showed off her new Ferrari. Send them in. The board members entered first, 15 men and women who had finally realized the true state of their company. They took their seats quietly, avoiding eye contact. Then came Peter and Jessica, both looking confused and slightly annoyed at being on a remote island instead of planning their precious reunion. Finally, Uncle Richard strode in, his usual confidence somewhat diminished. He stopped short when he saw me, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. Samantha. His voice cracked slightly. What are you doing here? Hello, Uncle Richard, I smiled, taking my seat at the head of the table. I believe your board requested this meeting with Morgan Industries CEO. That would be me. Jessica laughed, but it sounded forced. This is a joke, right? You're just some kind of assistant here. Actually, Bernard Thompson, the head of Sullivan Industries board, cleared his throat. Ms. Morgan is the founder and CEO of Morgan Industries. We're here because Sullivan Industries is 3 months away from bankruptcy. I finished for him, pulling up more detailed financial projections. Your last quarter showed a 45% drop in revenue. Your Asian markets are collapsing. And that Singapore contract you lost? It was just the beginning. Uncle Richard's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. This is ridiculous. We're here to discuss a potential partnership, not to be lectured by my wayward niece. Partnership? I laughed softly. Uncle Richard, you're not here for a partnership. You're here because Morgan Industries is your only hope for survival. I gestured to Olivia, who distributed folders to everyone present. Inside you'll find our acquisition proposal. Morgan Industries will purchase Sullivan Industries for $2.4 billion, about 40% of its value from 5 years ago, but significantly more than its current market worth. Peter, who had been frantically scanning the documents, looked up. This is impossible. Your company, it's worth $7 billion as of this morning's market opening, I supplied. Though that number will likely increase once this acquisition is announced. Jessica's designer handbag slipped from her lap. But you're nothing. You live in some tiny apartment. You don't even come to family events. I choose not to attend family events, I corrected her. There's a difference. As for my living situation, perhaps you should have asked instead of assumed. I pressed a button and the screens changed to show Morgan Industries Holdings. Office towers in major cities, shipping ports, technology centers, and yes, this private island. While you were posting about yacht parties, Jessica, I was building something real. While you were planning reunions to showcase the family's success, I was actually creating it. Uncle Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is manipulation. You deliberately kept this hidden, waiting for your chance to what? I cut him off. To succeed. To build something substantial while you were all playing at being business royalty? Yes, I kept my success quiet. I learned from watching you that true power doesn't need constant validation. The board members were shifting uncomfortably, probably remembering all the times they dismissed me at family functions. Bernard Thompson spoke up again. The terms of the acquisition are quite generous, considering our position. Generous? Uncle Richard sputtered. She's trying to steal my company. Your company? I stood slowly, placing my hands on the table. Let's talk about your company, Uncle Richard. Let's discuss the corners you cut, the regulations you ignored, the employees you mistreated. Would you like me to share that information with your board? His face went from purple to pale. He knew exactly what I was referring to, years of questionable practices I had documented during my time as his assistant. The acquisition offer stands until noon tomorrow, I continued. After that, Morgan Industries will begin purchasing Sullivan Industries' debt from your creditors. I imagine they'll be quite motivated to sell, given your recent credit rating. Jessica, finally grasping the situation, leaned forward. But what about the family reunion? What about our reputation? I smiled, thinking about all the times they had excluded me, mocked me, dismissed my choices. The reunion at the Ritz? I believe they're owned by Carlton Hotels now. I paused for effect. Which is a subsidiary of Morgan Industries. Perhaps we should discuss a change of venue. The silence in the room was absolute. Through the windows I could see more helicopters approaching, news teams, probably, alerted to the possibility of a major business acquisition. Think carefully about your next move, I advised, standing to leave. You have until noon tomorrow to accept the offer. After that, well. I gestured to the financial projections still displayed on the screen. I'm sure you can do the math. As I walked toward the door, Uncle Richard found his voice. Samantha, wait. We're family. We can discuss this. I turned back, meeting his eyes. Family? Like when you banned me from the reunion for being a failure. Or when you told potential clients not to work with my amateur company. That kind of family. Before he could respond, my phone buzzed. The Sullivan Industries stock had dropped another 5% just during our meeting. Tomorrow's deadline suddenly seemed very far away for them. Olivia will show you to the guest villas, I said. I suggest you use the time to review the proposal carefully. Oh, and Jessica? I smiled at my cousin. Do try to keep this off social media. At least until the papers are signed. As I left the conference room, I heard the chaos erupting behind me. Board members arguing about the offer, Jessica crying about their reputation, Peter presumably calculating his diminished trust fund. But I wasn't finished yet. The acquisition was just the beginning. Part 3 of my plan would teach them the true meaning of family legacy. Looking out over my island paradise, I thought about how far I'd come from the niece they'd dismissed as a failure. Tomorrow they would learn that success doesn't need their approval to change their world. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand that some failures are actually victories in disguise. The next morning dawned clear and bright over my private island, but the atmosphere in the Sullivan family's guest villas was anything but sunny. Through my security feeds, I watched the chaos unfold as my family grappled with their new reality. Miss Morgan, Olivia entered my office. The board members have been meeting since 5 a.m. Mr. Sullivan tried calling his major shareholders, but... She smiled slightly. It seems Morgan Industries already owns a significant portion of their stock through various subsidiaries. I nodded, reviewing the latest market reports. Sullivan Industries stock had dropped another 8% in pre-market trading. News of the emergency board meeting had leaked and investors were nervous. And my cousins? Miss Jessica has been trying to delete her social media posts about the family's success. Mr. Peter is in the business center, apparently looking for jobs. A knock at my door interrupted us. Bernard Thompson, looking like he hadn't slept, entered with a thick folder. The board has reviewed your offer, Ms. Morgan. We're prepared to recommend acceptance, but your uncle is still trying to find a way out? I finished for him. Let me guess. He's contacted Maxwell Financial and Turner Corp for competing bids. Bernard's surprise was evident. How did you? Because I know my uncle, I said, pulling up another document on my screen. What he doesn't know is that Maxwell Financial is already in partnership with Morgan Industries and Turner Corp. I smiled. Well, they're our next acquisition target. The morning wore on as I waited for my family to accept the inevitable. At 11:30, 30 minutes before my deadline, Uncle Richard finally requested a meeting. He entered my office alone, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Gone was the arrogant patriarch who had dominated family gatherings with tales of his business prowess. You've won, Samantha, he said quietly. The board is preparing to sign the acquisition papers. This was never about winning, Uncle Richard. I gestured for him to sit. It was about building something meaningful, something sustainable. Everything you taught me not to do. He flinched at that. We were trying to protect you. No, I cut him off. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. I pressed a button on my desk and the wall screens came to life, showing Sullivan Industries' complete financial history. Every misstep, every missed opportunity, every shortcut that had led to this moment. Your company is failing not because of market conditions or bad luck, but because you prioritized appearance over substance. You chose short-term profits over long-term stability. You valued family name over actual competence. And you're different, he challenged weakly. I stood and walked to the window looking out over my island. Look around, Uncle Richard. Everything you see, the island, the company, the success, I built it quietly, methodically while you were all busy mocking my choices. I don't need to brag about my achievements because they speak for themselves. A knock at the door announced the arrival of the board members, led by Bernard. Jessica and Peter trailed behind, both looking shell-shocked. The papers are ready, Bernard announced. I took my seat behind the desk as Olivia distributed the final acquisition documents. The room was silent except for the shuffling of papers and the occasional muffled sob from Jessica. Before you sign, I said, pulling out one last folder, there's something else you should see. Inside were detailed plans for Sullivan Industries' restructuring, not its dismantling as they probably feared, but its reinvention. Morgan Industries isn't going to absorb Sullivan Industries completely, I explained. Instead, we're going to transform it. New management, new practices, new opportunities for those willing to earn them. I looked directly at my cousins. Peter, Jessica, you both have positions waiting, entry-level positions. Real jobs, not the ceremonial titles you're used to. If you want them, you'll work your way up just like every other employee. Jessica's mouth fell open. Entry-level? But we're family. Exactly, I smiled. And it's time this family learned the value of actual work. Uncle Richard was reading the restructuring plans, his expression unreadable. You're keeping the Sullivan name on the company? Modified, I corrected him. Morgan Sullivan Group will be a subsidiary focused on ethical investment and sustainable growth. Everything you should have been doing all along.